talk about those days in Atlanta, the early days of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the kind of courage that it took to sit in at lunch counters, to do some of the other things that were at the time regarded as so threatening to the majority of the society.
Well, I'm not sure if it took a tremendous amount of courage to sit at the lunch counter. The chances of some harm being done to you were not slight, but not sure. I sat in first in 1960. I led a group of students from the Atlanta University Center to City Hall in Atlanta. And in City Hall in Atlanta had a cafeteria in the basement, and I led them into this cafeteria, and they had steam tables like they do in many cafeterias, and black women dishing up the food, and we went on through there, and you could see these women were looking at us with a mixture of fear and admiration. Fear because they knew what we were doing. This was sit-in, and a sit-in meant police were coming, and that was frightening to them. And admiration because they'd seen this happening in other parts of the South, Upper South, and they were happy it was happening in Atlanta. And I made my way to the front of the line. I was the leader of this group, and there's a white woman sitting there at the cash register, and she said, "I'm awfully sorry, this is for City Hall employees only." I said, "You have a big sign out front that says City Hall cafeteria, the public is welcome." She said, "We don't mean it." I said, "Well, we'll stand here until you do." And she called the police, and the police came and arrested us rather, and took us to jail, separated us by sex. And I found myself in a large bullpen, almost as big as half of this room, with these other men who had been arrested for heaven knows what. And I didn't want to ask a single one of them, "Why are you here, my good man?" But they knew why we were there, and they were happy to see us and praiseworthy of what we had done, and clapping us on the back and saying, "Way to go, good for you." And because so many people had been arrested in other parts of Atlanta that day, they decided to choose one person for each arrest site. And I was chosen to be tried for mine, and I found myself in this courtroom, and I found myself standing between two men, an older man and a younger man. I found out these are my lawyers, men I'd never seen before, and there's some back and forth between the judge and my lawyers, which I really didn't understand. And the judge turned to me and he said, "How do you plead?" Well, I was really nervous about this question because on the one hand, a policeman had asked me to move and I'd refused to move, and so I thought I was guilty of something. On the other hand, I didn't think he had a right to ask me. This was a tax-supported cafeteria. I was a taxpayer. I had a right to be there and I had a right to eat there. And so I didn't know what the right answer to this was. So I turned to the lawyer on my left, who was the senior of the two. He was Colonel A.T. Walden. He was a heroic figure. He had spent his, I'd say 60, 70 years defending black people in small towns in Georgia where he could not spend the night. And just a wonderful, wonderful guy. And he was asleep. He was like this. And I looked to my right, where the younger of the two men was. He was the protege of the older man. And he said to me in a stage whisper, he said, "Not guilty, you fool." And I had the wit to drop those last two words. or I wouldn't be sitting here now.